For 18 years, a woman in Columbus, Ohio, had been telling her husband that she had no living family left. She had said it clearly, early in their relationship, and she had not said much more than that. Her name was Angela. Her husband's name was David Park. David had accepted what Angela told him the way you accept things from someone you love, not without noticing that the door was closed, but without pressing on it, because you understand that some doors have been closed for a reason, and the person inside them will open it when they are ready. He had spent 18 years not pressing. On the afternoon of May 4th, 2023, David Park stood at the Family Feud podium across from a woman named Keisha Summers from Detroit, who buzzed in fast and laughed loudly and had a gap-toothed smile that David could not stop looking at. He could not stop looking at it because he had spent 18 years looking at that exact smile across a breakfast table. In the second commercial break, David Park turned to Steve Harvey and said, "I think I know who that woman is." Steve Harvey stopped what he was doing. He looked at David. He looked at Keisha. He walked off the set and he did not come back for 6 minutes. When he came back, he stopped the show. It was a May afternoon in Atlanta. The Family Feud studio had done this thousands of times. The Park family had come from Columbus. David, his college roommate Terrence, his sister-in-law from his side Brenda, his nephew Kwame, and his neighbor Pete, who had won the 5th spot through a coin flip that David still disputed. David Park was 44 years old. He was an orthodontist. He had a careful way of moving through the world, deliberate, observant, that served him well in his profession and that made him notice things other people walked past. He had noticed, from the moment the Carter family was introduced, that the woman on the other side of the podium had a quality he could not immediately name. Something familiar. Not the kind of familiar that comes from having seen someone before. The deeper kind. The Summers family from Detroit was loud in the warm, specific way that families are loud when they have earned the right to take up space together. Keisha was the center of it, the one the others turned toward, the one whose laughter set the tone, the one who buzzed in even when she wasn't sure, and then made everyone laugh about being wrong. She had a way of carrying herself that was both entirely casual and entirely confident. Steve Harvey had taken to her immediately in the pre-show. He had said, "You are the energy this room needed." Steve introduced both families on camera. David Park shook Keisha Summers' hand across the podium. She smiled at him. The gap-toothed smile. Up close. Direct. David Park's hand went still for exactly 1 second in the middle of the handshake. Nobody noticed. Or almost nobody. Nobody in that studio knew what Angela Park had told David 18 years ago and what she had never said since. Angela Mitchell had grown up in Detroit. She had a sister 8 years younger than her, Keisha, and a mother who drank in a household that had no stable floor. Angela left at 22. She left with nothing, and she did not leave a forwarding address, because forwarding addresses implied the possibility of being followed, and she was not ready to be followed. She had told herself she would go back for Keisha. She had told herself this for 1 year, and then 2, and then 5, and at some point the telling became a wound she could not keep reopening, and she had sealed it the way people seal things they cannot survive if they keep touching. By the time she met David in Columbus, Angela had built a complete and genuine life. She had a career. She had a home. She had David, who was steady and observant and who did not press on closed doors. She had told him she had no family left. It was not entirely a lie. She had told herself the same thing for so long that it had become structurally load-bearing in her identity, and removing it was more than she had ever found a way to do. Keisha had grown up. She had stayed in Detroit. She had married, divorced, raised 2 children mostly alone, worked as a dental hygienist, built her own version of a complete and genuine life. She had looked for Angela once through a mutual cousin in 2011. The cousin had said Angela had moved to Ohio, and that was all anyone knew. Keisha had filed that fact somewhere and left it there. Because some things you can only reach for so many times before reaching begins to feel like the thing that hurts you. And she had too much else to be responsible for to keep hurting herself with it. And that wasn't even the part that made Steve Harvey stop the show. The game ran through its first 2 rounds normally. Both families were competitive. Keisha Summers stole a round in the second segment with an answer that made Steve laugh so hard he had to put his cards down. David Park watched her from across the stage with the expression of a man who is doing mathematics in his head that he does not yet have all the numbers for. Then, the second commercial break came. The cameras stopped. The floor crew moved. And David Park turned to the nearest production person, a young woman named Lisa with a clipboard, and said, quietly, "I need to speak with someone from production. Now, before we go back on." Lisa flagged the segment producer. David said, "The woman on the other side. Keisha Summers. I think she might be my wife's sister. My wife told me her sister's name was Keisha. She grew up in Detroit. She has a smile that—" He stopped. He said, "I need someone to check." The segment producer looked at him. She looked at Keisha across the stage, who was laughing at something her cousin had said and had no idea any of this was happening. The producer made a call. The call went up the chain in 3 minutes. Steve Harvey was told in his earpiece during the break. He walked off the set. He did not come back for 6 minutes. When he came back, his face was arranged differently than it had been before the break. He looked at David Park. He looked at Keisha Summers. He looked at his stage manager and gave one nod. He said, "We're going to stop the game for a minute." The audience, who had not been told anything, went quiet. Steve walked to the center of the stage. He said, "Something has come to my attention during the break that I need to handle before we continue. And I want to be careful about how I do this, because the people involved deserve that." He paused. He looked at David. He said, "David, your wife's name is Angela. Her maiden name was Mitchell. She grew up in Detroit." He said it plainly, directly, as a statement of fact he was confirming rather than a question he was asking. David Park said, "Yes." The studio fell completely silent. Keisha Summers looked at Steve. She looked at David. Something happened in her face, a sequence of things moving quickly, like a person running through files they haven't opened in years. She said, "What did you say her name was?" Steve said, "Angela Mitchell Park, originally from Detroit. She has a sister named Keisha, who is 8 years younger than her." Keisha Summers put both hands on the podium. The room held its breath. She said quietly, "Angela left when I was 14. Steve Harvey pressed his handkerchief to his face. He had to turn away from the cameras. He stood with his back to the audience for a moment. His shoulders moved. He turned back. He said, "Keisha, I need to tell you something. Angela doesn't know you're here. She's in Columbus right now. David hasn't told her anything because he wasn't sure until today." He looked at David. "Are you sure?" David Park said, "I'm sure." Steve said, "Okay." He straightened his jacket. He became very still, very deliberate. He said, "Here's what's going to happen. Nobody is going to do anything fast. We're going to take a moment. And then I'm going to let you make a choice, Keisha, not me. You, because this is your life and this is your sister, and you get to decide what comes next." He pulled out his phone on the live stage, something hosts never do during tapings. He held it out to Keisha Summers. He did not dial. He held it out and he said, "When you're ready." not before. You decide when. Keisha Summers looked at the phone for a long time. The audience was silent. 300 people in a room, not breathing in any way that mattered. Keisha picked up the phone. She looked at David. She said, "What's her number?" David said the number. His voice broke on the last 4 digits. Keisha dialed. She put the phone to her ear. The room stayed silent. 1 ring, 2. Then a voice, Angela's voice, coming through the speaker that Keisha had automatically engaged without meaning to, coming through loud enough for the nearest microphones to catch, said, "Hello? David? Why are you calling from?" Keisha said, Angela. The sound on the other end of the phone stopped. Then, Keisha. Not a question. Recognition, pure, immediate, structural recognition that happens below the level of the mind. The sound that came through the phone after that from Angela Park in Columbus, Ohio, who had sealed a door for 23 years and just heard it open, was the kind of sound that does not belong on a game show stage. It belonged in a bedroom, or a kitchen, or a car pulled to the side of a road. It belonged somewhere private. But it had arrived here, and the room held it as carefully as any room has ever held anything. Keisha Summers was crying. David Park had both hands pressed against his face. Steve Harvey was not trying to speak. He sat on the edge of the stage and watched, and did not say anything, and understood that there was nothing to say. He was not done, though. Not for the people watching. After the call, after Keisha and Angela had been on the phone for 11 minutes while the studio held its breath and the cameras kept rolling, and the Carter family across the stage stood very still, with their hands folded in front of them, like people who have accidentally walked into a church, Steve stood up. He said, "I have been hosting Family Feud for years. I have never stopped a game because of something I was told in a commercial break." He looked at the camera. "And I would stop it again. Every time." He turned to both families. Both families take home the $20,000 today. Because what happened in this room today has nothing to do with a score. He turned to the camera one last time. He said, "To everyone watching at home who has a closed door with someone on the other side of it, someone you walked away from, or someone who walked away from you, I want to say this: the door can still open. It doesn't open easily. It doesn't open without everything the closing cost. But it opens. This is what it looks like when it opens." When the episode aired 7 weeks later, the clip of Keisha dialing and Angela's voice coming through the phone had been seen by 143 million people from a production recording. The full episode's broadcast drew the second-largest single-night audience in Family Feud history. The hashtag, "the phone on the stage," trended in 41 countries. 3 network news programs ran the audio of the call, with Angela's permission obtained in writing, without the image, because the audio alone was sufficient. 3 months after the taping, Angela Park drove to Detroit. She did not take a flight. She drove 11 hours from Columbus, arriving at Keisha's apartment on a Saturday morning. Keisha was waiting on the front steps. Angela parked the car. She got out. The 2 women stood on the sidewalk and looked at each other for a moment, the way you look at someone when you have been building a version of their face in your memory for years and need to update it. Then they went inside. A year after the taping, Angela and Keisha spoke every week, sometimes twice. Angela had met Keisha's 2 children, Marcus, 16, and Imani, 12. Imani had told Angela at their first meeting that she had seen the episode of Family Feud and that she had cried. Angela had said, "So did I." Imani had said, "You weren't even there." Angela had said, "I was on the phone." David Park, for his part, has said only this in any interview. I noticed the smile. I've been looking at that smile for 18 years. You don't forget a smile like that. He said it quietly. He said it the way a man says something he's been thinking about since before he had words for it. Today, Angela Mitchell Park does not describe herself as someone with no family left. She has updated that story. She has updated it with 18 years of context that she did not have when she first told it, and with a phone call from a game show stage in Atlanta on a May afternoon, and with a Saturday morning on a Detroit sidewalk, and with Imani's 12-year-old face looking at her like she has always been expected. David Park, for his part, has said in every interview he has given since the episode that the thing he thinks about is the handshake. Not the game. Not the phone call. The moment his hand went still during the introduction. He said, "I have shaken thousands of hands in my career. I have never had a handshake do what that one did. Something stopped inside me. Like a frequency I had been receiving for 18 years suddenly changed pitch." He paused. I think Angela's smile arrived before I knew what I was holding. He said he thinks about that sometimes, about what would have happened if they had been placed on the same side of the podium instead of opposite sides. He would not have seen the smile straight on. He might never have noticed. He says he is grateful for the specific accident of the seating arrangement. He says he believes it was not an accident. Keisha's son Marcus, 16 at the time of the taping, watched the episode with his mother when it aired. When the segment with the phone call played, his mother's voice, and then Angela's, Marcus said, "To no one in particular, she sounds like you." Keisha had looked at him. He said, "She sounds exactly like you. Even the way she breathes when she's surprised." Keisha had not said anything for a moment. Then she had said, "She's my sister." Marcus had nodded. He seemed to find this entirely sufficient as an explanation. He had gone back to watching the episode. Keisha had looked at her son for a long moment. She had thought about all the ways that a face can carry a family forward through time, in the voices of children who are carrying something they have never been told, that arrives in them anyway. David Park, for his part, has said in every interview since the episode that he thinks about the handshake. He says, "Something stopped in me during that handshake. I have never been able to fully explain it. Some kind of recognition that went below language." He pauses. I think Angela's smile arrived before I knew what I was seeing. I think I had been looking at that smile for 18 years, and some part of me recognized where it came from before my brain did. He stops. "I'm glad we were on opposite sides of the podium. I needed to see it straight on. Some closed doors stay closed forever. Some open in the most ordinary rooms in the most unexpected ways. Because someone on one side noticed a smile and said so, and nothing was ever the same again." Angela Mitchell Park had kept a door sealed for 18 years because she did not know how to open it without losing herself. On a May afternoon in Atlanta, someone noticed a gap-toothed smile and said something about it, and the door, which had never been locked, only sealed from the inside, came open on its own. All it had needed was someone paying close enough attention to notice it was there. If this incredible story of a family found after 18 years of separation touched your heart, subscribe and share this with someone who believes it is never too late. Have you ever been reunited with someone you thought was gone from your life for good? Share your story in the comments. Because as Angela and Keisha proved, some doors don't close permanently. They wait. Ring the notification bell for more moments that remind us that the families we lost are sometimes only one phone call away.